Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. This evening I'm extremely excited to be off to see The Inheritance at the Noel Theatre. I'm going to see part 1 tonight and then I'm going to see part 2 tomorrow night, so I'm very much looking forward to it. I'm going to be talking a bit about the show throughout it so that you kind of get some context, but everybody has been saying to me that this is Play of the Year of 2018, so I'm very much looking forward to it. I don't really know that much about the show apart from the fact it's based in New York and it's also about the HIV and AIDS epidemic. So without further ado, let's go to the Noel Theatre to see The Inheritance. Woo! So I've just arrived at the Inheritance Theatre, well, Heritage Theatre, I meant to say Noel Coward Theatre, ready to see The Inheritance Part 1. I don't know what to expect, apart from the fact I've heard amazing things, so I thought I'd catch it as it is January. Happy New Year, by the way. I thought I'd catch it before it finishes. It's meant to be Play of the Year, so I'm looking forward to it. Yay! So I am just inside the theatre. I am row V, the very back row. I paid £45 for my ticket, but it's a very good view actually. It's dead centre and I'm on the end of a row, which is perfect. So it's V16, but yeah, I've literally got no one there. It's kind of nice to be on the end. But yeah, looking forward to it. It should be very good. I got the book as well, which is really cute, and also got a programme, which is very nice. Put in this very lovely bag. DMT, thank you. So I'm looking forward to it. Just in the first interval, oh my goodness, just so powerful and incredibly moving so far. I feel like it's going to be, it's very hard to hitting, so I think it's just going to get even more intense, but the acting is absolutely superb. The most powerful part about that just now was all those names of dead, very hard hitting and hard to stomach as well, but yeah, the epidemic was huge, so yeah, it's emotional, but I don't know what to expect for the next part. Also, I just want to say, the chemistry between the actors on stage is amazing, and the characterisation and the way they're telling the story through narration with barely any set is absolutely fantastic so far. Also, the sex scene was incredibly funny, also very romantic and quite relatable. It was hilarious, so funny, and yeah, I just think it's so brilliant, like the way it's done. It was so clever without being explicitly sexual. Like, it is sexual, but at the same time it wasn't. If you've seen the play, you'll know what I mean. It was done through physical theatre, so very much told through the body, without so much taking off any clothes. It was really impressive. I really enjoyed it. So yeah, that's the first interval, part 1. There is another interval, I believe. So yeah, so far so great. Now, after the second interval of part 1, short break as you could say, oh my goodness, Wilcox Men, very powerful, and I cried. Yeah, I just cried. So hard hitting, it just gets more and more hard hitting. Final part of part 1, about to happen. Just left part 1 of The Inheritance. That was absolutely, I'm lost for words. It was absolutely outstanding, and yeah, very teary-eyed because it was emotional and beautiful and left me with a lot of feelings. Yeah, very thought-provoking, just incredible, one of the best I've ever seen. That's only part 1. Looking forward to seeing part 2 tomorrow, but I've got a lot more to say when I get home about part 1, but whew, literally not a dry eye in the audience then. That was so moving, one of the most moving plays I've ever seen. 100%, wow. So I just got back from part 1 of The Inheritance and I'm absolutely blown away. It was just one of the most moving things I have ever seen. And I'm getting all choked up and my throat is going, I've got a lump in my throat. It's just wonderful. It's got so many important things that are said in this play. It's all about being gay, all about being proud to be gay, but also the difficulties of being gay and also the problems that you face when being gay, and HIV and AIDS. It's all about the epidemic and of course falling in and out of love. The whole play is very realistic. It's very close to home for a lot of gay guys, including myself. A lot happens in the first part of the play, including the main two protagonists. You've got Eric and Toby, who are in a relationship, but they fall out of love, even though they kind of love each other at the very beginning. There are scenes of a sexual nature in the show, but it was very well done. It was done through kind of like physical theatre. Like, it wasn't just a normal sex scene. It was very well thought out, and the direction was absolutely superb. It was stunning. The way everything was done and put together was just so simple yet so effective, and just moved me to tears. It's just the way they were moving across the stage, and at the end of part one, they all of the extras and all of the people move in from behind the stalls, and you really felt part of it. Like, I got spine tingles. I can feel it right now. I've got goosebumps as all of those people, as he gets to the house at the end of part one. If you've seen the show, you'll understand the concept of it. And I just couldn't stop crying. I just had to let it all out, because it was just such a beautiful telling of part one. And a huge thank you to the cast and crew. It was just incredible. I really can't muster the words, and nothing that I say in speech can really put into words how incredible this show is. Like, I'm not even to part two yet, and I'm incredibly emotional. Anyway, not gonna cry again, or I will cry again. It's just left me with so many thoughts and feelings, and has touched me, has made me think, has made me feel for those who may have people in their lives that have HIV or AIDS, or are going through a hard time. Yeah, you know, it really is so hard-hitting and makes you feel those feelings with the guys on stage. And it's just so simplistic, yet so powerful. And I also loved the imagery of the cherry tree, which is of course on the front of the poster. There's a reference to the cherry tree, and you kind of understand it once you've seen the show. But wow, I'm just so moved, and I'm really looking forward to seeing part two tomorrow. I think I'm going to take more tissues this time, because I wasn't as prepared this time. But yeah, if you can see The Inheritance, it's on through to January 19th. January 19th is the last day. This play is a must-see, and if you can see it, I really hope you do get to see it. If not, I hope it goes to Broadway. I hope the world gets to see it, because it's such an important story, and there's so much in there, and the acting is just unreal. Like, I cannot rave about it enough. 100% the best play I've ever seen in my life. Like, I have never been moved like that. I feel like the acting was better than a movie, better than anything I've ever seen on stage. It was just absolutely, as I said, I cannot put it into words. It was amazing. So I'm very much looking forward to Act 2. I said Act 2, Part 2 tomorrow, and I'm going to be covering that on my channel. So I really want to thank you for watching this video. This is the first video of my new year, and I feel like it's a really great one. My first theatre show of the year, which is probably the best choice I could have made ever. The Inheritance at the Noel Coward Theatre. Oh my goodness. Bring on Part 2 tomorrow. Yay! This evening is Tuesday 8th of January, and having seen part 1 of The Inheritance yesterday on Monday, I am off to see part 2 this evening. Now, last night was just something else. I cannot describe how much of an amazing night I had, and how phenomenal the acting was that I saw. I can't wait for part 2. I keep saying Act 2. For part 2 of The Inheritance, I think it's going to be quite emotional. I think there's a lot to look forward to. But yeah, this time I'm taking tissues with me. So without further ado, let's go back to the Noel Coward Theatre. I'm a bit further forward in the stalls this evening for The Inheritance Part 2. Let's go! Woohoo! So I've just arrived at the Noel Coward Theatre, ready for part 2 of The Inheritance. Very much looking forward to it. Yesterday was incredible, so I'm excited for day 2. So let's do this. Woo! So I've just popped outside for some fresh air. I'm currently in the interval of part 2 of The Inheritance. I am so emotionally invested in these characters, and it just gets more and more dramatic, and I get more and more emotionally invested. And I just can't help but feel so bad for the characters, but also just think, oh my goodness, what a mess. I feel so bad for them. I empathise with them, but then I also hate them at the same time. There's a mixture of emotions and feelings, and I have never felt so attached to characters quite like I have this one. It's very, very, very hard-hitting again, and the last scene just now before the interval was so intense. And it was also, I think some of it's humorous, but then it will switch from humour to very, 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 very dark scenes. So yeah, it's an emotional roller coaster of part 2, but I'm looking forward to the very, very last part, which is going to be in the next 10 minutes, so I can have a little break. But whew, the emotions are very high, and I'm looking forward to the very, very last part. I'm not ready for it to finish. It's an absolutely stunning show. Like, the acting is astonishing. Like, I've never seen anything like it, and I'm absolutely loving it. Wow. Just left Inheritance Part 2, and I am emotionally drained. There is nothing left. I feel so numb. It was absolutely stunning, and there is nothing I have seen quite like it. I've not stopped crying, and right now I feel emotion very high. Don't know how they did that, but it was an absolutely one of the most beautiful, most powerful stories and plays I think I've ever seen. Yeah, I'm going to be thinking about it for a very, very long time from now. Wow, it was incredible. So I just got back in from seeing one of the most incredible plays, The Inheritance Part 1 and Part 2, and I'm just going to talk a bit about the play because I felt that it's so important to be seen, as it's got so much history in it, and also shows you how it's not always easy to be gay and living in society right now as it is. But also the kind of troubles and hardships that so many gay people face with regards to sex, relationships, and being in love and being in a couple. Now, the story kind of follows a guy called Toby. Well, actually, it's a group of gay New York guys who are essentially at the beginning of the play writing their own story about Toby. Now, Toby is very charismatic, he's very energetic, he's very enthusiastic, and he loves to write. Toby writes his own play during this play. Now, he gets engaged to Eric at the very beginning of the play. So Toby and Eric are very much in love. They have sex, they're very intimate, they love each other with all of their heart. And then, of course, these things don't quite work out. So along comes Adam. I can't remember the specifics of how Adam came into it, but Adam is another kind of love interest slash kind of like flatmate friend, maybe friend with benefits. It's not completely clear, but as far as I know at this point, they both kind of fancy him a bit. So Eric likes him, but so does Toby, so they're both into him. And then what happens is, so they come into contact with many other different gay guys at this group, and you learn various different things about all of the characters, which is really interesting, and it's very touching at times as well, because you hear a lot. There is a very, very funny scene, which I absolutely loved, that says a lot of "Yas Queen," and the script, as much as it is emotional and heartfelt and important, it's also very humorous and funny, so it definitely kind of shows the funny side of the gay community as much as it does the serious and important and very, very hard-hitting side of things in the play. They then come into contact with Henry Wilcox and Walter. Now, Henry Wilcox and Walter kind of also had an on-off relationship, and they're a lot older than Eric and Toby, and essentially what happens between them both is, again, they're on an on-off relationship, but Walter is the hero in this. Walter created slash set up a place outside of New York for those gay people with HIV and AIDS who couldn't live in the city anymore and were basically on their way to their death. It's very, very sad. It's really, really, really hard-hitting and emotional and heartbreaking, but at the same time what Walter does is leaves a legacy, and that legacy is left with Eric at the very end of the show. So Eric has given his house. Eric breaks up with Toby at the beginning, and Toby ends up kind of going a bit crazy when he releases his Broadway play. It all goes to his head. He then makes so much money that he kind of falls for Adam as well, but Adam's not into it. Adam accuses him of all kinds of things, so Toby kind of loses track a bit in New York. He ends up kind of not talking to Adam, not talking to the director of his own play, so he loses absolutely everything. So then he turns to prostitution, and he turns to this character called Leo, who's also played by the same person, Samuel H. Levine, who plays Adam and Leo, so he doubles up as both. And essentially he goes off with Leo. He pays him lots and lots more money to keep coming back to him. They go on holiday together, he pays for them to go on holiday, and Leo grows slowly more and more attached to Toby. Again, they separate after their holiday, after lots of drugs, lots of sex, lots of very, very hard-hitting and uncomfortable stories to hear, but at the same time these things do happen. Again, there's quite a deep element of HIV and AIDS, and there's also mention of the symptoms and things that can happen when having sex without a condom, for example, and various different diseases as well. There's mention of chlamydia as well and STDs. I'm going to be talking about these things because I feel like it's so important that we talk about these things, that we talk openly about them, and this is exactly what this play does. So this is probably a lot of information to process. There you have it. You have Toby and Eric living two completely different lives at this point. Toby's kind of gone off the rails and is sleeping with Leo, and then you've got Eric, who's kind of living his own kind of lonely life, but he wants companionship. So at the end of part 1, Eric is left on his own, so he's not with Toby at this point, and he tries to find a place where he feels comfortable, and that is at Walter's place. So Walter, at the end of, I think it was the end of part 1, very sadly passes away and dies, and that's when in part 2 Eric and Henry's relationship develops. So Henry and Walter, as young men, were very much in love at a time when they weren't allowed to be in love. It was very taboo. They couldn't be gay, which is why they kind of left New York City and kind of found another place near the cherry tree. Now the cherry tree is part of this house and is mentioned quite a few times as a place of love and escape and a place of safety and being in a place where they can be with people just like themselves. And yes, so basically Walter comes back into the, so he's left the scene. He also, Paul Hilton, who plays Morgan / Walter, does a lot of storytelling around this, so he comes in and out even though his character is certainly dead, because as I mentioned before, it's a group of gay guys kind of telling another story. So there are parts of the election as well, when Trump came into power at White House, they've got mentioned of that, and there's so much about gay rights and how important it is to be visible in society and in the world. So Henry ends up with Eric, they end up getting married, but it's not so happy because Henry is a billionaire, he's filthy rich, and Eric gets to live in his house. He's very, very lonely because Henry constantly goes away. So he goes away on various different jobs, so he barely ever sees Eric. And that's when Eric comes into contact with some more guys, but also he meets Leo, but he meets Leo in a very, very kind of troubling situation with Toby. So what happens is when they get married, so Henry and Eric get married, Eric invites Toby to this wedding weeks in advance. He doesn't think he's going to turn up, and then he turns up completely drugged up, looking in an absolute state, with Leo by his side. Now obviously Leo is a prostitute, so he's been sleeping around with a lot of people because that's how he earns his money, and at this point it's when it gets really dramatic. So this is in part 2, and this is when we find out Henry has been sleeping with Leo like 1 to 2 months every now and then, on and off, paying him to sleep with him. Now we don't know whether that was while he was with Eric or whether it was before, but he asks him to get out straight away. Like Toby creates a complete mess and chaos, and Leo and Toby are like jumping all over the audience, they're crawling through them, they're completely on drugs and out of it. Anyway, so drama, it gets very, very dramatic. So following that, they all break contact. Leo again gets very emotional. Due to sleeping to lots of people, he gets HIV/AIDS, and finds out that he's positive in a surgery because he's not been seen to. He's homeless, Leo, I should mention that as well. So he's very, very desperate. So at this point, he doesn't know what to do with himself. And then along comes Eric, who kind of saves Leo, gives him a house and a home, which was Walter's previous place. Whilst Henry is away, he looks after him, he waters him, he feeds him. And then later on we meet Vanessa Redgrave, the famous actress who plays Margaret. Now Margaret also kind of lives at the house where Walter did. I think I'm along the right lines there, and that's what I got from it anyway. And essentially she looked after all of those people that have died over the years of HIV and AIDS, including her own son, who was only 25 when he passed away. He fled away from home because when he came out to her, she was like, oh no, we need to pray for you, you know, despite the fact that she now knows now that what she said to him was wrong to make him run away. So he gets HIV AIDS. She then says goodbye to him, but at the same time kind of uses kind of Leo, so the guy that plays Leo, Samuel, says goodbye to his own son, and it's all done through kind of physical theatre of, you know, the emotions, and you kind of, they double up on all kinds of roles, but it is extremely emotional because she says her last goodbye to him, and it is incredibly touching and moving. And then if we fast forward a bit more, he comes back, he turns up again, and he sees Leo, but he calls Leo Adam, and that's when Leo just loses it. Leo is so upset because Toby doesn't at all realise that it's Leo, not Adam. So the whole time he was sleeping with Leo, he was basically just pretending he was Adam, thinking he was Adam, and Leo is really upset. He smashes a glass over Toby's head. Now that was quite a dramatic scene, as you can imagine. There was lots of gasping. It was very, very emotional, but you could kind of see why it happened, and I personally sympathised with Leo at this point because it was as if he was just an object. It was just someone that he didn't care for. He was just a replacement. And as he says in the play, I think he doesn't call himself a replacement, he calls himself a substitute. So he goes, I'm just a substitute, which is so sad. And of course Eric is very quick to resolve this. Like, he looks after Leo, he then comes back to the house. You find out further down the line that kind of Toby very sadly lights a match on a car, drives off, and it explodes and he dies. But before that, you have a really beautiful scene between, I had Joshua De La War, who is playing the boy, who is basically Toby's younger self, and he's looking at himself as a picture. Eric kept, even though they split up years ago, Eric kept hold of all of Toby's boxes of things, which were all of Toby's parents. Now, Toby, very sadly, his dad, we find out in part 2 that his dad committed suicide and that his mum also died of drinking too much. So basically, a very, very, very sad, traumatic childhood that he had. And then he dies, and then they're all left together. So you've got Leo, Eric, Henry, and lots of other gay guys with HIV AIDS. And Eric essentially just takes them all on board, just like Walter did. And it's incredibly emotional towards the end. They all come together and they sit under the cherry tree, and that's kind of the end. But it's a bittersweet ending because it shows you the realities of HIV and AIDS. It's very hard-hitting, it's emotional, it's upsetting to watch, but whilst it's upsetting, it's something that does still happen in the world, and it's a really beautiful story. It's all about caring for each other, loving each other, remembering that we are all human and that we should be there for each other. And the whole play is just full of love, and the inheritance is essentially Eric inheriting Walter's house and kind of doing his duty. So Walter did it when it was very, very much a big no-no, and even now, you know, being gay isn't fully accepted in the world. And you know what Walter did was coming of age, and Eric took that on board and has done exactly the same. So it's a really inspiring ending, but it's also very emotional because they all kind of sit facing the cherry tree at the end, and the music goes off and they hug and they sit behind a red light, and it's just the most gorgeous finish to any play I've ever seen. So I thought, as I obviously have been talking about this, I hope that all made sense. There's lots of different characters. I think anybody that's seen it will kind of understand it a bit more, but you can read the play text. It's available to buy online and also from the theatre. If you don't get to see it, I really recommend it. Reading it, it's amazing. And I thought I would share with you all the very last quote from the play because it's really, really special. So, here you go. So, this one comes from Henry. Walter. Forgive me. Please forgive me, Walter. I'm so sorry I wasted so much time. Walter, you have so much left. Henry, what do I do now, Walter? Tell me what to do. Walter, you do what they could not. And that is the end. So that's kind of like a, I guess kind of in a way, a throwback to the inheritance that was left. That is the epilogue at the very, very end, and it's at Eric's house, which was formerly Walter's. So he's inherited the house, and he's also inherited what I've mentioned before, of looking after those with HIV and AIDS, and also those people who may be in that dangerous kind of place where Leo was at the point in the play, you know, where they might not have the emotional support or the loving support that they get from their family or friends. Eric's house and Walter's house was that place of safety and place of love and place of acceptance. So the play is very much about acceptance, love, and being yourself. And yeah, I really am lost for words. As much as I can remember, I hope that kind of summary made sense. This is a very, very long video, part 1 and part 2, but I'd just like to say a huge thank you to the cast. It was so awesome to meet all of you. You're incredibly talented. I've been so blown away by this cast. It's just unreal. So Noel, Sola, wow, he deserves an Olivier. In fact, if I could, I would give them all an Olivier award. It'd be really incredible to hear all the different stories of the different characters that are featured in The Inheritance, because as much as you hear kind of Henry, Walter, Eric and Toby stories, and Leo and Adam's, it would be lovely to hear from the other gay guys in the Inheritance play. But overall, I absolutely loved it, I adored it, and it's on until Saturday 19th of January, and then it finishes in the West End at the Noel Theatre. So if you can get a ticket, they're very expensive now, the ones that are left, if there are any left by the time I release this video, but be sure to check it out. The Inheritance is mind-blowing. Also, I'm going to link the cast details and tickets below so you can go read more about each and every one of them, but wow, I'm blown away. One of the best plays I've ever seen, and I don't think anything's going to top that. I'll be very surprised if it does, but wow, I'm so impressed. So I want to say a huge thank you for watching. If you did like this video and you'd like to see more like this, then be sure to give it a big thumbs up, click subscribe, and I'm hoping this year in 2019, I love musicals and I see lots of musicals, but I'm also hoping to see lots more plays. I've got lots of plays coming up, including All About Eve at the Noel Theatre, starring Gillian Anderson and Lily James, so I'm going to be doing a little video about that. I've also got Betrayal, starring Tom Hiddleston, lined up, and I'm also hoping to catch another Harold Pinter play, which is starring Martin Freeman and Danny Dyer, so be sure to look out for those videos, coming very, very soon. Again, I'd like to plug Stage Faves as well. I'm going to be doing lots more first night takeovers, so be sure to subscribe to them below. But yeah, I think that's everything. The Inheritance blew me away, and I'm excited for more exciting theatre. The best way to start 2019. Yes! Absolutely loved it. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you very, very soon. Bye!